All right, friends. We are on chapter 2. Henry Gets Rich. One day after school, Mrs. Huggins asked Henry to run down to the market for a pound of ground beef. On the way home, he decided to cut through the vacant lot to see if he could find a Coke bottle to return at the supermarket for some money to add to his bike fund. He was careful to keep the meat away from Ribsy's mouth. While Henry was looking for bottles, Ribsy, barking excitedly, bounded off into the bushes. Because it was so unusual for his dog to leave a package of meat, Henry followed to see what he was chasing. It was only a neighborhood cat, but when Henry started back to the path, he noticed a piece of gray cardboard with printing on it sticking out of the bushes. He stopped to see what it was. "Wow!" exclaimed Henry. Thrown carelessly into a hollow and half hidden by weeds was a pile of boxes. On the end of each box was printed the words, "Double Bubble Gum." Telling himself the boxes were probably empty, Henry hastily hid the meat in a bush out of the dog's reach before he eagerly ripped open one of the boxes. It was full of pink balls the size of a marble. Henry popped one into his mouth, bit through the sugar coating, chewed vigorously, and then blew a rubbery pink bubble. It really was a box full of bubble gum. Henry opened several other boxes and found them full of bubble gum too. He didn't have time to count the balls, but there must have been 200, maybe even 300 in each box. Then he counted the boxes. There were 49, all full of bubble gum. 49 times 300 was, well, it was a terribly big number. Henry couldn't believe it. 49 boxes of bubble gum and 300 balls in each box. It was enough to last the rest of his life. He'd never have to park his gum again and save it. He was rich with bubble gum. Then Henry began to think. He knew he was rich only if he could get the gum home without being seen by the other boys and girls. That wasn't going to be easy. He took the pound of ground beef out of the bushes and picked up 2 boxes of gum. "Come on, Ribsy," he said, and ran home as fast as he could. Henry tossed the package of meat onto the drain board in the kitchen and stowed the gum under his bed in his own room. Then he ran down Klickitat Street toward Beezuz's house. He was careful to slow down when he saw her in the yard. "Hi," said Henry, as if he had all the time in the world. "Hello, Henry," said Beezuz, gathering a handful of tulip petals and tossing them into the air so they fell over her in a pink shower. Her little sister Ramona was sitting on an apple box at the edge of the sidewalk. "Say, Beezuz," said Henry casually, "could I borrow your red wagon for a little while?" "What for?" asked Beezuz, looking much too interested. "Oh, just an errand," said Henry. "Can I go?" asked Beezuz. "No," Henry hid his impatience. "It's just some work I've got to do." "Then you can't borrow it," said Beezuz, and gathered another handful of flower petals. Henry saw that this was a situation that must be handled carefully. "I'll give you a piece of bubble gum." He blew a bubble for her to admire. "Okay," agreed Beezuz. "Give it to me, and I'll get the wagon." Henry knew she had him there, and he hadn't put any loose gum in his pockets. He should have known better than to ask for a favor anyway. "I'll give it to you when I get back," he said. Beezuz was firm. "Not unless I go, too." Henry saw Scooter riding toward them on his bike and knew he had to act fast. He didn't want old Scooter hanging around asking questions. "Okay," he agreed quickly. "You can go, but just remember, I've got double dibs on what I'm going to bring home." When Henry and Beezuz returned from the backyard with the red wagon, Scooter was no longer in sight, but Ramona was still sitting on the apple box. "Come on, Ramona," said Beezuz, taking an old panda bear out of the wagon. "We're going with Henry." "No," said Ramona. Henry was getting anxious. What if Scooter decided to cut through the vacant lot? "Jeepers, Beezuz, we just gotta hurry. It's awfully important. If we don't get where we're going, we might be too late." "Ramona," coaxed Beezuz, "can't you play that game some other time?" "What game?" asked Henry. He couldn't see that Ramona was playing any game. "She's playing Waiting for a Bus," explained Beezuz. "Oh," Henry groaned. That was the dumbest game he'd ever heard of. "Doesn't she know it isn't any fun to just sit around on a box?" he asked, looking nervous and looking up and down the street. If only he could be sure no one else had found his gum. "Shh," whispered Beezuz. "She thinks it's fun, and I don't want her to find out it isn't. It keeps her quiet." Then she said to her little sister, "If you get in the wagon, Henry and I will pull you, and you can pretend you're riding on the bus." Henry was relieved that this idea pleased Ramona, who climbed into the wagon. He and Beezuz ran down the street, pulling the wagon behind them. When they came to the path for the vacant lot, Beezuz pushed the wagon and Henry pulled it. If only no one else had discovered Henry's treasure. "Gee willikers," said Beezuz in a hushed voice when she saw what they had come for. "Are all those boxes really full of gum?" "They sure are," said Henry, gathering an armload. Beezuz began to help. "And it's all yours?" "Sure, I found it, and I said I had double dibs, didn't I?" said Henry. "But just to be sure, I gotta get it home before the other kids see it." Now Beezuz was a sensible girl who understood the importance of this, and she began to work faster. She lifted Ramona out of the wagon. Ramona yelled, "Ah!" "Here, chew this," said Beezuz, poking a piece of gum into her mouth. When Beezuz and Henry had all the gum loaded onto the wagon, Henry took off his jacket and spread it over the boxes. Then they pulled their cargo home as fast as Ramona could run. "Whew," breathed Henry when they turned into his yard. Now that the gum was on his property, no one could come along and say he had dibs on it too. He flung himself down on the front steps. "Come on," he said, "let's chew." Beezuz helped herself to a ball of gum and crunched through the sugar coating. Henry added a ball to the one he already had in his mouth. Ramona, too young to be an expert, smacked noisily. Henry gave Ribsy a piece. Looking puzzled, the dog tried to bite into it. The ball, though, rolled around in his mouth until he spat it out on the grass and looked reproachfully at Henry. Beezuz admired the size of the bubbles Henry blew with a double wad, so she tried a second ball. Henry tried a third. Then Robert came down the street. "What's up, Doc?" he asked. "Look." Henry blew a bubble the size of a tennis ball. When it broke with a satisfying pop, he had difficulty getting it back into his mouth because it stuck to his chin. "Have a piece," he said. "Have 2 pieces," he said, when he was able to talk. "Wow!" Robert stared at the wagon load of gum. He lost no time in putting 2 pieces into his mouth. The group chewed busily until Mary Jane approached. "Henry Huggins, where did you get that gum?" she demanded. "Have a piece." Henry ignored her question as he extended a box of gum to her. "No, thank you," said Mary Jane. "My mom says chewing gum is vulgar." She watched the other kids chew until she could stand it no longer. "Well, if you don't mind," she said, "I think I will try just 1 piece." Henry pulled a bubble back into his mouth. "Sure, help yourself." The first time Mary Jane tried to blow a bubble, she blew the gum out of her mouth into the grass. No, 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 that's not the way, said Henry, offering her another piece. Flatten it with your teeth and poke your tongue into it before you blow. After a little practice, Mary Jane blew small, ladylike bubbles. Then Scooter came pedaling down the street on his bike. He stopped when he saw the group on the steps. Hey, say Huggins, when are you going to get that bike? Henry blew an extra large bubble before he answered. You just wait and see, Scooter. Scooter whistled with amazement. Say, Huggins, where'd you get all that gum? None of your beeswax, said Henry through his wad. How about letting me have a piece? Asked Scooter. Nope, said Henry. Aw, come on, coaxed Scooter. Nope. Henry was pleased he had something Scooter wanted. Scooter thought for a moment. I'll let you ride my bike to the corner and back if you give me a piece of that gum. This put a new light on the matter. Let me ride it around the block, bargained Henry. Okay. Scooter got off his bike. Just one piece, Robert. You watch my gum while I'm gone. Henry picked up the bike. He wished he weren't so wobbly at riding because he knew he'd never hear the last of it if he took a spill and crashed in front of Scooter. He stepped on the high pedal with his left foot, threw his right leg across the seat, and found the other pedal with his right foot. The bike was too big for him, and he teetered from one side of the walk to the other before he got started. But then he got going, and Henry began to enjoy himself. Oh, this was the life, and if Scooter let him ride around the block for one piece of gum, there was no telling what he could get with the rest of that gum. Henry started to make plans. He'd use the gum the way the Indians had used wampum. He'd take some to school and see what the other boys and girls would offer to trade him. Why, they might even give him money for the gum. If he sold it for less than the store, say 2 balls for a nickel, he'd get rid of it in no time and have the money for his bike fund. Oh, he'd show old Scooter yet. And that, my friends, is where I'm going to stop for today. And we'll try again tomorrow. Have a good afternoon.